The screaming started before dawn. Kira pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the underground shelter, listening to the sounds of her world ending. Above them, through 30 meters of reinforced stone and steel, the Vorthak war machines carved through Zilara Prime like predators through prey. Each thunderous impact sent dust cascading from the ceiling, and each silence that followed meant another piece of their civilization had been erased forever. "How many are left up there?" whispered Joran, his blue-tinged skin pale with terror. The young Karani clutched a data pad showing the city's defense grid, or what remained of it. Red indicators blinked like dying stars across the display. 17,000 in the eastern districts, replied Elder Thane, her voice hollow with defeat. Maybe less now. Her ancient eyes, which had seen 3 centuries of peace, now reflected nothing but ash and despair. The Vorthak don't take prisoners. They never have. The shelter held 200 souls, scientists, artists, teachers, children, the last remnants of a species that had chosen harmony over warfare for 1,000 years. Their weapons were archaeological curiosities. Their military was a memory. Their philosophy of universal peace had made them beloved across the galaxy, and now it would make them extinct. Another explosion shook the bunker. A child began to cry. Kira closed her eyes and remembered the morning sky of Zilara Prime. How the twin suns painted the crystal spires of their capital in shades of gold and violet. She remembered the floating gardens where she had studied xenobotany, the singing bridges that connected their cities, the libraries that held the poetry of 50 worlds. All of it was burning now. Elder Thane called Marin from across the shelter. The communications officer's tentacles trembled as she worked her equipment. "I'm still broadcasting our distress signal, but..." Her voice cracked. "No one is coming. The Galactic Council says they cannot interfere in territorial disputes. The Sithari claim they're bound by non-aggression treaties. The Nexus Coalition sends their thoughts and prayers." Thoughts and prayers. Kira almost laughed at the cosmic irony. The Karani had given the galaxy music, mathematics, medical advances that had saved billions of lives. They had mediated conflicts, shared their knowledge freely, asked for nothing in return except to be left in peace. Now, when they needed help most desperately, the galaxy offered only empty words. "What about the humans?" asked Joran suddenly. The shelter fell silent except for the distant rumble of destruction above. Elder Thane shook her head slowly. "The humans disappeared 30 years ago. Some say they destroyed themselves in civil war. Others claim they found something in the dark between stars and simply left. Either way, they're gone, child." "But their last transmission was 3 decades ago," Thane said firmly. "From a colony ship heading toward the galactic rim. We are alone, Joran. We have always been alone." The lights flickered as another blast wave rolled through the underground complex. In that moment of darkness, Kira saw the truth reflected in every face around her. They were going to die here. Not today, perhaps, but soon. The Vorthak would dig them out like parasites from a wound. Their children would never see sunlight again. Their stories would end with them. Marin's equipment crackled with static. "Wait," she whispered, adjusting her headset. "I'm receiving something. It's not Vorthak frequency." Everyone leaned forward. Hope was a cruel thing, but it was all they had left. "Unknown vessel, this is Karani Emergency Broadcast Station 7. Marin transmitted. "Zilara Prime is under attack. Civilian populations are trapped. Please identify yourself." Silence stretched like a held breath. Then, through the static, came a voice. It was rough, tired, and speaking in accented galactic standard. "Karani Station, this is Task Force Omega of the Terran Defense Corps. We received your distress call." A pause. "We're inbound to your position. Hold tight." The shelter erupted in confused murmurs. Terran Defense Corps. The humans were supposed to be extinct, scattered, gone. This had to be a mistake, a misunderstood transmission, a cruel joke from the universe. Unknown vessel. Marin replied, her voice shaking, "Please confirm your species designation. Are you human?" Another pause. In the background, they could hear what sounded like weapons charging, orders being given in a clipped, efficient language. Affirmative, Karani Station. Human. And we're very, very angry about what's happening to your world. The transmission cut to static, leaving 200 refugees staring at each other in stunned silence. Above them, the Vorthak continued their methodical destruction of everything the Karani had ever built. But for the first time in days, Elder Thane smiled. "Perhaps," she whispered, "we are not alone after all." The first sign that everything had changed came at 3:47 local time, when the Vorthak orbital bombardment suddenly stopped. Kira jolted awake in the suffocating darkness of the shelter, her body instinctively braced for another blast wave that never came. Around her, 200 Karani refugees stirred uneasily, conditioned by days of terror to expect the worst when patterns shifted. Marin. Elder Thane called softly to their communications officer. "What's happening up there?" The young Karani's tentacles danced across her equipment, searching frequencies with desperate efficiency. Static filled the shelter, punctuated by fragments of panicked Vorthak transmissions. Then, cutting through the chaos like a blade, came a human voice speaking in rapid, clipped tones. "Razor 7, the Hammer Actual. Vorthak Dreadnought neutralized. Moving to secondary targets. Time to clean up, 18 minutes. Copy, Razor 7. Nightmare Squadron is weapons-free on orbital platforms. Let's give these bastards something to remember." Marin's eyes widened as she translated for the others. "The humans, they're attacking the Vorthak fleet. The orbital bombardment has stopped because..." She paused, listening intently. "Because they're destroying the ships." Impossible. The Vorthak invasion force consisted of 3 dreadnoughts, 12 battlecruisers, and countless support vessels. Their military doctrine had conquered 40 worlds in the past century. They were the apex predators of known space, and their fleet had been hammering Zalara Prime into submission for 6 days straight. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The bombardment had ceased. The Vorthak emergency frequencies crackled with increasing desperation. "Elder," whispered Joran, "should we go up? Should we look?" Before Thane could answer, new voices flooded the comm channels. Human voices, dozens of them, coordinating with a precision that spoke of absolute professionalism. "Charlie Company, establish perimeter around Grid 77. Bravo Company, sweep and clear the industrial sector. Watch for civilian markers. The Karani are using blue-white distress beacons. Viper Squadron, I've got Vorthak armor divisions moving through the Crystal Gardens. Permission to engage." Granted. Show them why we don't let genocidal maniacs play in pretty places. The shelter's external sensors picked up new sounds filtering down through the rock and steel. The sharp crack of energy weapons, the roar of atmospheric fighters, the heavy thrum of dropships landing. But these weren't the brutal, overwhelming sounds of Vorthak war machines. These were controlled, surgical, purposeful. "How many ships did they bring?" Kira asked. Marin adjusted her sensors, trying to cut through the electronic warfare clouding their readings. I can't get an accurate count. The humans are using some kind of stealth technology I've never seen before. But the energy signatures..." She looked up, bewildered. "It's like they brought an entire battle fleet." "That's impossible," Elder Thane protested. The last confirmed human military vessel was a single colony ship. Their homeworld went dark decades ago. Their colonies stopped responding to diplomatic channels. How could they possibly field a battle fleet? Her question was answered by a transmission on the emergency civilian frequency. A transmission clearly meant for Karani ears. Attention Karani civilians. This is Colonel Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. We are conducting combat operations against Vorthak forces on your world. For your safety, remain in designated shelter areas until we broadcast the all-clear signal. Repeat, stay in your shelters. We're here to help, but this is going to get messy. The voice carried an authority that made even Elder Thane straighten instinctively. It was the voice of someone who had seen worse hells than this and emerged victorious. We need to make contact, Thane decided. Marin, can you reach this Colonel Chen? I can try. Marin's tentacles worked frantically at her console. Colonel Chen, this is Karani Emergency Station 7. We have 200 civilians in Shelter Complex Delta 9. Our location is. We know where you are. Chen's voice cut through smoothly. We have thermal scans of every shelter on the continent. Sit tight. We're working our way through the Vorthak positions systematically. Should reach your area within 2 hours. 2 hours. After 6 days of hopeless terror, rescue was 2 hours away. Colonel. Elder Thane took the communicator from Marin. I am Elder Thane of the Karani High Council. How is this possible? We thought humanity was extinct. A pause. In the background, they could hear explosions, shouted orders, the distinctive whine of human plasma cannons. Extinct? Colonel Chen's laugh was sharp and humorless. Lady, we've been building ships and training soldiers for 30 years, waiting for something like this. The galaxy wrote us off as dead, which made it real easy to prepare for the day some genocidal empire decided to wipe out our friends. But your homeworld is perfectly fine, just heavily classified. Turns out the best way to build a military is to make everyone think you don't exist. Another explosion echoed through the comm. Hold on, Elder. We've got Vorthak heavy armor incoming. The transmission filled with the sounds of battle. Not the desperate, chaotic noise of a losing fight, but the controlled fury of professional soldiers doing what they did best. Tango 4, put an antimatter torpedo into that walker. Tango 6, cover their flanks. Remember, these things massacred civilian children yesterday. Show them what human hospitality looks like. The sounds of destruction that followed were unlike anything in the Karani's experience. It was precise, overwhelming, and utterly merciless. When Colonel Chen's voice returned, it was calm again. Sorry about that, Elder. Where were we? In the shelter, 200 Karani refugees listened to the sounds of their salvation playing out in the darkness above. The first human soldier Kira saw stepped through the shelter door like death wearing armor. The massive figure moved with fluid precision, his black combat suit absorbing light rather than reflecting it. His helmet retracted with a soft hiss, revealing a scarred face that looked like it had been carved from granite and weathered by decades of war. Cold blue eyes swept the shelter, cataloging threats and weaknesses in milliseconds before settling on Elder Thane. Ma'am, he said, his voice carrying the gravitas of mountains. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. Are you in charge here? Elder Thane nodded, suddenly feeling ancient and fragile in the presence of this human weapon. I am Elder Thane of the High Council. We are grateful beyond words for your intervention. Webb's expression didn't change. Save the gratitude, ma'am. We're not done yet. He gestured to his left, where 2 more soldiers emerged from the tunnel. A woman with cybernetic implants gleaming along her skull, and a man whose arms bore the mechanical precision of military-grade augmentations. Sergeant Torres will escort your people to the surface, Webb continued. Lieutenant Hayes will establish a secure perimeter. The immediate area is clear, but we'd got Vorthak reinforcements inbound from the southern continent. Reinforcements. Joran stepped forward, his voice cracking with residual terror. How many more are there? Webb's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. Doesn't matter, kid. We brought enough firepower to glass half the galaxy if we need to. The question isn't whether we can handle their reinforcements. The question is whether we leave any of them alive to warn the rest of the Vorthic Empire what happens when you mess with our friends. The casual certainty in his voice sent chills through every Karani in the shelter. This wasn't bravado or desperate hope. This was the confidence of apex predators who had found their prey. As the refugees began filing toward the surface, Kira found herself walking beside the augmented Lieutenant Hayes. His mechanical fingers moved constantly, interfacing with devices built into his armor, processing tactical data at superhuman speeds. "Lieutenant," she ventured, "how many ships did you bring?" Hayes glanced at her with eyes that held circuits instead of irises. "Classified. But between you and me, Doc," he had somehow identified her as a scientist within seconds. "We've been building this fleet for 3 decades. Every resource, every breakthrough, every angry thought about what happened to civilizations like yours. We may have gone dark to the galaxy, but we never stopped watching." They emerged into daylight, and Kira gasped. The crystal spires of Zilara Prime still stood, but now they were surrounded by the technological marvels of human engineering. Massive dropships hung in the air like predatory birds, their hulls gleaming with weapons systems that defied her understanding of physics. Human soldiers moved through the ruins with mechanical efficiency, establishing fortified positions and clearing debris. But it was the orbital view that truly staggered her. Through the smoke and atmospheric distortion, she could see the remains of the Vorthek fleet, twisted metal sculpture drifting dead in space, testament to the fury of human weapons. "Hal," she whispered. Colonel Chen materialized beside her as if summoned by the question. The human commander was smaller than her soldiers, but radiated an authority that made the air itself feel heavier. Battle damage scored her armor, and dried blood stained her gloves. 30 years of preparation, Chen said simply. 30 years of watching species like yours get butchered, while the galaxy wrung its hands and offered thoughts and prayers. We decided that the next time genocidal maniacs came calling, there would be someone ready to answer. She gestured to the horizon, where more dropships were descending through the clouds. "We've got 12 battle fleets, each one capable of reducing a star system to component atoms. We've got soldiers trained in every form of warfare known to the galaxy, plus a few we invented ourselves. We've got weapons that would make the old human empire look like children playing with sticks. But why help us?" Elder Thane had joined them, her ancient voice heavy with wonder. "You owe the Karani nothing. We offered you no military alliance, no trade agreements. We are pacifists who contributed nothing to galactic defense." Colonel Chen's expression softened for the first time since the battle began. "Ma'am, you gave the galaxy music. You gave us mathematics that let us build better star drives. Your medical techniques saved my daughter's life when she was born with genetic defects. You asked for nothing in return except to be left in peace." Her voice hardened again. "The Vorthak took that peace and turned it into ashes. That's not something we let slide." A new transmission crackled through the tactical network, drawing Chen's attention back to her command duties. "Colonel, this is Admiral Morrison aboard the Retribution. Vorthek reinforcement fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. Looks like they brought friends. I'm reading hegemony signatures and what might be void cult vessels." Chen's smile was predatory. "Copy that, Admiral." "How many?" "Roughly 300 ships, ma'am. Mixed fleet composition, but they're bringing everything they've got." Around them, human soldiers began moving with renewed purpose, checking weapons and establishing defensive positions. But there was no panic, no fear, only the cold efficiency of professionals preparing for another day at the office. 300 ships, Elder Thane breathed. "Colonel, perhaps you should withdraw. You've done more than enough. We can evacuate to the southern continent." "Ma'am," Chen interrupted gently, "we didn't come here to evacuate. We came here to send a message." She turned to face the sky, where the first flickers of enemy ships were becoming visible through the atmosphere. What message? Kira asked. Colonel Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut through starship armor. That humanity is back, and we're very, very unhappy about what's been happening while we were away. The battle for Zalora Prime's orbital space began at 11:47 local time, when 300 enemy warships dropped out of hyperspace directly above the crystal spires. Kira watched from the fortified observation bunker the humans had constructed in record time, her scientific mind struggling to process the tactical display showing impossible odds. The enemy fleet spread across space like a metallic cancer. Vorthak dreadnoughts, hegemony battlecruisers, and the twisted bioships of the Void Cult, all united in their hunger for Karani extinction. They're jamming all frequencies, reported Lieutenant Hayes, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the human battle network. Standard Vorthak doctrine. They want to prevent any survivors from warning the galaxy about their alliance with the cult. Elder Thane gripped Kira's arm with trembling fingers. How many human ships are out there? Colonel Chen studied the tactical display with the calm focus of a master chess player. Enough. The first exchange of fire lit up the void like newborn stars. Enemy plasma lances and gravitic torpedoes hammered down toward the human fleet, weapons that had reduced entire worlds to molten slag. The humans responded with something entirely different. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to twist space itself, missiles that phased in and out of reality, and projectiles that struck with the force of controlled supernovas. Jesus Christ, whispered Sergeant Webb from his position at the tactical console. The admiral's using the new quantum disruptors. I didn't think Command had authorized those for field deployment. They hadn't, Chen replied grimly. But when you're facing 3-to-1 odds and the enemy is allied with cosmic horror cultists, you break out the experimental weapons. The quantum disruptors carved through enemy shields like they weren't there, reducing massive warships to expanding clouds of constituent atoms. But the aliens adapted quickly, their formations shifting to present more dispersed targets while their own exotic weapons began finding their mark. Human cruiser Defiance is taking heavy damage, Hayes reported. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Denied, Chen said without hesitation. Nobody withdraws until every last genocidal bastard is cosmic dust. Kira found herself oddly fascinated by the humans' approach to warfare. The Karani had always viewed combat as crude and primitive, the last resort of species too stupid for diplomacy. But watching the humans fight was like observing a deadly art form. Every movement calculated, every decision measured against a strategic framework that encompassed not just this battle, but the future of galactic civilization itself. Why don't they retreat? She asked. Their ship is crippled. Because retreating would mean abandoning you, Webb answered. And humans don't abandon people who need protecting. It's not in our programming. The battle raged for 6 hours. Enemy reinforcements continued dropping out of hyperspace. First dozens, then hundreds more ships as every genocidal empire in the sector sensed an opportunity to destroy both humanity and the Karani in a single stroke. The human fleet should have been overwhelmed within minutes. Instead, they adapted. New contacts, Hayes announced. Human reinforcements arriving via. What the hell is that signature? The tactical display showed dozens of new human vessels materializing not from hyperspace, but from what appeared to be folded space itself. They emerged like predators stepping out of shadows, their hulls varying configurations that hurt to look at directly. Experimental fleet, Chen explained, her voice tight with controlled excitement. We've been working on some new theories about space-time manipulation. Turns out, if you're willing to risk tearing holes in reality, you can build some very interesting weapons. The new arrivals immediately began demonstrating their capabilities. Enemy ships didn't just explode. They ceased to exist, erased from reality by weapons that operated on principles the Karani couldn't begin to understand. Others found themselves trapped in temporal loops, repeatedly experiencing the moment of their destruction without ever quite dying. This is impossible, Elder Thane whispered. The energy requirements alone. How did you develop such technology? 30 years of focused research, Chen replied. 30 years of every human scientist, engineer, and strategist asking the same question. What would we need to stop the next genocide? We built fleets in hidden systems. We developed weapons in pocket dimensions. We recruited every angry refugee, every displaced survivor, every species that had watched their neighbors get butchered while the galaxy did nothing. The tide of battle shifted as the experimental fleet carved through enemy formations like scythes through wheat. But the true shock came when the largest void cult bioship began reshaping itself into something that violated every known law of physics. The living weapon that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Colonel, Hayes called out, his voice tight with concern, that thing is preparing to fire some kind of reality-warping weapon. If it targets the planet, it won't get the chance. Chen cut him off. She opened a direct channel to the human flagship. Admiral Morrison, you are clear to deploy the Midnight Protocol. Even over the comm, Morrison's hesitation was palpable. Ma'am, are you certain? We don't know what the long-term effects. Do it. The human flagship began reconfiguring itself, its hull flowing like liquid metal as hidden systems came online. When the transformation completed, it no longer looked like a ship at all. It looked like a mathematical equation given physical form, a weapon designed by physicists who had studied horrors from beyond the galaxy. What happened next defied description. The Midnight Protocol didn't destroy the void cult bioship. It convinced reality that the ship had never existed in the first place. One moment, the massive horror was reshaping local spacetime to its will. The next, there was simply empty void where it had been, with not even debris to mark its passing. The remaining enemy fleet broke and ran, their formations scattering as ships desperately sought escape routes back to hyperspace. The humans let them go, but not before marking each vessel with quantum tracers. Why let them escape? Kira asked. Colonel Chen's smile was colder than interstellar space. Because now they're going to spread the word about what happens when you threaten our friends. Fear is more effective than firepower when it comes to preventing future genocides. As the tactical display showed the last enemy contacts disappearing into hyperspace, Elder Thane turned to the human commander with tears streaming down her ancient face. You saved us, she whispered. You saved our entire species. Chen shook her head. Ma'am, we didn't save you. We just showed the galaxy that the age of unopposed genocide is over. She gestured to the orbital view, where human ships were already beginning reconstruction efforts. From now on, when the wolves come calling, the sheep won't be alone. 3 days after the battle, Kira stood in the reconstructed Hall of Memories, watching human engineers work alongside Karani artisans to rebuild what the Vorthak had destroyed. The collaboration should have been impossible. The Karani were philosophers and poets, their architecture flowing like frozen music through space. The humans were warriors and pragmatists, their designs focused on function over beauty. Yet somehow, they were creating something magnificent together. Crystal spires reinforced with quantum-stable alloys, singing bridges that hummed with both ancient harmonies and protective force fields. They're learning our songs, Elder Thane observed, joining Kira at the observation platform. The human engineers, they're studying our architectural frequencies and incorporating them into their defensive systems. It was true. The humans had arrived as conquerors of death, but they were staying as students of life. Kira had watched soldiers with hands stained by alien blood carefully tending to the wounded crystal gardens. She had seen cybernetically enhanced warriors sitting in rapt attention as Karani children taught them traditional songs. Dr. Chen wants to speak with you, said a familiar voice. Kira turned to see Lieutenant Hayes approaching, his mechanical augmentations gleaming in the filtered sunlight. Over the past 3 days, she had learned that the cybernetic officer had been a xenobiologist before the war, his academic background making him a natural liaison between the two species. Dr. Chen, Kira asked. Colonel Chen's daughter, Hayes explained. She's leading the cultural integration team. Apparently, she's been fascinated by Karani biomathematics since she was a child. They found Dr. Sarah Chen in the lower levels of the hall, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex molecular structures. She was younger than her mother, perhaps 30 standard years, but she carried the same focused intensity that seemed to define humanity. Dr. Kira, she said, looking up from her work, I've been reviewing your research on symbiotic plant networks. The applications for ecosystem restoration are extraordinary. Kira studied the displays with growing amazement. The human scientist had taken her theoretical work on bioneural integration and expanded it into practical applications for planetary healing, ways to use living networks to repair radiation damage, restore atmospheric balance, even accelerate the natural evolution of damaged species. This is beyond anything we imagined, Kira admitted. How did you develop these techniques? Sarah's expression darkened momentarily. We've had plenty of practice cleaning up after genocides. Every world the Vorthak touched, every species the hegemony pacified. We've been following behind them for decades, trying to undo the damage. She gestured to a display showing cellular regeneration patterns. You learn a lot about healing when you spend your life witnessing wounds. The conversation was interrupted by Colonel Chen's voice over the facility's communication system. All personnel to the main assembly hall. We have visitors. They found the great hall packed with Karani civilians and human soldiers, all attention focused on the central holographic display. The image showed a sleek diplomatic vessel approaching Zalara Prime, its hull bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council. About time, muttered Sergeant Webb from his position near the wall. Wonder what empty gesture they're bringing this time. The Council's message began broadcasting moments later. Ambassador Telleran of the Sithardic Collective appeared in three-dimensional splendor, his ceremonial robes gleaming with diplomatic authority. Greetings to the survivors of the Zalara Prime incident, he began, his voice carrying the practiced sympathy of professional diplomacy. The Galactic Council deeply regrets the tragic events that have transpired here. We come bearing humanitarian aid and assurances that such incidents will be prevented through enhanced diplomatic channels. Elder Thane stepped forward to respond, but Colonel Chen raised a hand, stopping her. No, the Human commander said quietly. Let me handle this. The holographic ambassador continued his prepared speech about peace initiatives and non-violent conflict resolution, apparently unaware that his transmission was being received by the species he refused to help just days earlier. Ambassador Telleran. Colonel Chen's voice cut through the diplomatic rhetoric like a laser through fog. This is Colonel Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. On behalf of humanity, I have a message for the Galactic Council. The ambassador paused, clearly startled by the interruption. I was not aware that humans were involved in this situation. Our records indicate that your species is extinct. Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut through diplomatic immunity. Common mistake, Ambassador. We've been very quiet for the past 30 years, but we're back now, and we have some thoughts about your enhanced diplomatic channels. The tension in the hall was palpable. Kira realized they were witnessing a moment that would reshape galactic politics forever. The human species formally rejects the Council's authority over matters of genocide prevention, Chen continued. Effective immediately, we are establishing the Terran Protection Accord, a mutual defense treaty open to any species tired of watching their neighbors get butchered while politicians debate diplomatic solutions. Ambassador Telleran's composure cracked visibly. You cannot simply. The established order of galactic governance is a failure, Chen interrupted. A complete, catastrophic failure that has enabled the deaths of billions while comfortable species like yours hide behind non-interference clauses. She gestured to the Karani civilians around her. These beings spent 1,000 years contributing to galactic civilization. When they needed help, you offered thoughts and prayers. When they needed protection, You cited legal technicalities. The ambassador straightened, trying to regain his diplomatic authority. The Council operates within carefully established legal frameworks designed to prevent larger conflicts. Your legal frameworks are worth exactly as much as the species they fail to protect, Chen said flatly. Which is to say, nothing at all. She stepped closer to the holographic display, her presence somehow making the three-dimensional projection seem smaller and less substantial. Here's how things work now, Ambassador. The next time a genocidal empire decides to exterminate a peaceful species, they won't face thoughts and prayers. They'll face human battle fleets equipped with weapons that can erase them from existence. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The age of unopposed genocide is over. Pass it on. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Elder Thane was the first to speak. Colonel, you've just declared war on the established order of galactic civilization. Chen's smile was grim but determined. No, ma'am. We've just declared that civilization is going to start meaning something again. 6 months later, Kira stood on the observation deck of the human research vessel Harmony, watching the lights of New Geneva Station twinkle against the star field. The massive orbital facility represented everything the galaxy was becoming. A joint human Karani research station where former warriors studied art and former pacifists learned tactical doctrine. The first Karani volunteers reported for military training today, Dr. Sarah Chen said, joining her at the viewport. 12 of them, including Joran from your shelter. Kira nodded, unsurprised. The young Karani had been fascinated by human military efficiency since the liberation. And how many human students enrolled in our philosophy courses? 47, Sarah replied with a smile. Including 3 combat veterans who want to understand why your people chose peace for so long. It was a strange new world they were building together. The Terran Protection Accord had grown from a simple mutual defense treaty into something approaching a shadow government, with over 60 species abandoning the Galactic Council's failed diplomacy in favor of humanity's practical protection. The humans provided military might and technological innovation, while their new allies contributed art, philosophy, and perspectives that had been forged in cultures spanning millennia. Dr. Kira, called a familiar voice. Lieutenant Hayes approached, his cybernetic implants now supplemented with Karani bioneural interfaces that allowed him to process information at speeds that defied comprehension. Colonel Chen wants to see you in the command center. We have a situation developing. They found the command center buzzing with activity. The main display showed a star system Kira didn't recognize. 3 planets orbiting a yellow star, with one world highlighted in emergency red. Picari system, Colonel Chen explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. The Nexus Coalition just received a distress call from the native population. The hegemony has arrived with a pacification fleet and is demanding the planet's mineral rights. The locals are refusing. Kira studied the tactical display. The Picari are a pre-spaceflight civilization. They have no way to defend themselves against orbital bombardment. They did have no way, Chen corrected. But last week, they formally requested membership in the Terran Protection Accord. The implications hit Kira like a physical blow. This would be the first test of humanity's promise to protect the defenseless. If they failed here, the Protection Accord would collapse and the galaxy would return to its old pattern of predators and prey. How long until the hegemony begins bombardment? She asked. 18 hours, Hayes replied. They're following standard doctrine, ultimatum, deadline, extermination. And how long until our fleet arrives? Colonel Chen's smile was sharp as a vibroblade. Our fleet is already there. The display shifted to show the Picari system in real time. The hegemony flotilla hung in space like predatory insects, 24 heavy cruisers and a command dreadnought, more than enough firepower to reduce the planet's surface to molten glass. But between them and their target stood something unprecedented in galactic history. A mixed fleet of human warships and allied vessels hung in perfect formation, their hulls bearing the insignia of 40 different species united under the Protection Accord. Kyrene medical ships nestled beside human battlecruisers. Thanari art vessels flew alongside Terran destroyers equipped with reality-warping weapons. "This is Admiral Morrison aboard the Terran vessel Retribution," came the transmission from the fleet flagship. "Hegemony forces, you are in violation of Terran Protection Accord Treaty 77 Alpha. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Hegemony commander's response crackled through space with arrogant dismissal. "Unknown vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Corvash of the Hegemony 3rd Pacification Force. You are interfering with lawful resource acquisition operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Admiral Morrison's reply was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "Admiral Corvash, this is your final warning. The planet Picari is under Terran protection. Any hostile action against the population will be considered an act of war against 43 allied species. Stand down." 43. Corvash's laugh was transmitted across all frequencies. "Impossible. The humans are extinct, and the rest of the galaxy lacks the spine for real warfare. You're bluffing with museum pieces and civilian vessels." What happened next would be discussed in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The human fleet didn't move. Instead, space itself began to ripple around them, reality bending as exotic physics came online. One moment, the mixed Protection Accord force appeared vulnerable and outnumbered. The next, sensor readings showed energy signatures that defied conventional understanding. "Admiral Morrison to all ships," came the broadcast. "Weapons free. Show them what unity looks like." The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Kyrene bioships released clouds of engineered organisms that ate through Hegemony armor like acid through paper. Thanari vessels projected artistic light patterns that somehow interfered with enemy targeting systems, turning their weapons against each other. Human ships unleashed quantum disruptors and temporal loop generators, weapons that had been theoretical concepts just years before. But it was the coordination that truly mattered. 43 species that had never fought together moved like a single organism, their diverse capabilities woven into a tactical symphony that overwhelmed Hegemony's standardized doctrine. Hegemony dreadnought neutralized, Hayes reported, his cybernetic implants processing battle data in real time. Their support vessels are requesting permission to surrender. Granted, Admiral Morrison replied. But they're going home with a message carved into their hulls. The galaxy has new management. Colonel Chen closed the tactical display and turned to address the command center. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted non-binary entities, we've just proven that the Protection Accord isn't a treaty. It's an evolution." Elder Thane, who had been observing from the back of the command center, stepped forward with tears streaming down her ancient face. "In 1 year, you've accomplished what the Galactic Council couldn't achieve in 3 centuries. You've made genocide unprofitable." More than that, Sarah Chen interjected, pulling up economic projections on her display. "We've made cooperation profitable. The trade networks established between Protection Accord species have generated more wealth in 6 months than most of them saw in decades under Council administration." It was true. The humans had brought more than just military protection. They had brought economic innovation, technological advancement, and a ruthless efficiency in resource management that made their allies prosperous as well as safe. Species that had spent centuries scraping by on the edges of galactic civilization now found themselves partners in humanity's expanding sphere of influence. "Dr. Kira," Colonel Chen said, "we're establishing a new research facility in the Picari system. We want you to head the xenobiology department. Your work on bioneural integration could help the Picari develop sustainable technology without losing their cultural identity." Kira nodded, understanding the deeper implications. The humans weren't just protecting primitive species. They were helping them develop in ways that preserve their uniqueness while giving them the tools to defend themselves. There's something else, Chen continued. We've received diplomatic overtures from several species currently under Galactic Council authority. The Deltari Confederacy, the Spiral Arm Collective, even some of the core worlds are quietly inquiring about Protection Accord membership. Elder Thane raised an eyebrow. The Council must be furious. The Council is irrelevant, Chen replied flatly. Yesterday's vote of no confidence passed with a 73% majority. Ambassador Telleran is probably updating his resume as we speak. The implications were staggering. In less than a year, humanity had returned from presumed extinction to reshape the fundamental power structure of galactic civilization. They had done it not through conquest or domination, but by offering something the old order never could: genuine protection for the defenseless and genuine partnership for those willing to stand together. Colonel. Lieutenant Hayes interrupted, "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." Chen straightened. Earth, the homeworld that had supposedly gone dark decades ago, leaving the galaxy to assume humanity was extinct. Put it through. The display shimmered, revealing a figure that made everyone in the command center straighten instinctively. Fleet Admiral Victoria Cross was a legend even by human standards. The woman who had unified the scattered human colonies, who had overseen the secret military buildup, who had planned humanity's return to galactic politics with chessmaster precision. Sarah, Admiral Cross said, using Colonel Chen's first name with the casual authority of someone who had known her since childhood. "I've been watching the Picari situation. Excellent work." "Thank you, ma'am. The Protection Accord continues to exceed projections. Which brings me to why I'm calling." Cross leaned forward, her expression becoming serious. "We've detected large-scale military movements in the Void Cult territories. They're massing fleets unlike anything we've seen before. Our deep space reconnaissance suggests they're preparing for something big." The mood in the command center shifted instantly from celebration to grim focus. The Void Cult represented the darkest aspect of galactic civilization. Species that had embraced technologies from beyond the galactic rim. Entities that sought to remake reality according to principles that violated natural law. "How big?" Chen asked. "Big enough to threaten multiple sectors simultaneously. They seem to have learned from the Picari incident that individual genocides are no longer viable. They're planning something coordinated, something that would force us to spread our forces thin." Hira felt a chill run through her bio-neural networks. "They're trying to identify the limits of human protection. Force you to choose which species to save and which to abandon." "Exactly," Cross confirmed. "Which is why we're accelerating Phase 3 of the Terran Integration Protocol." Even Colonel Chen looked surprised. "Phase 3? Ma'am, the projections showed that wouldn't be ready for another 2 years." "The projections didn't account for the success of the Protection Accord," Cross interrupted. "We now have 43 allied species contributing resources, technology, and personnel to our mutual defense initiatives. The Karani bio-neural integration alone has advanced our fleet coordination capabilities by decades." She gestured, and new schematics appeared on the display. Shipyard facilities on a scale that dwarfed anything in known space, manufacturing centers that could produce entire fleets in a matter of months, defensive networks that spanned multiple star systems. "Phase 3 is the construction of permanent protection infrastructure throughout Accord space," Cross explained. "Automated defense platforms, instantaneous communication networks, and rapid response fleets positioned to reach any member world within hours of a distress call." Elder Thane studied the schematics with growing amazement. "This isn't just military expansion. This is the foundation of a new type of civilization." "The type we should have built from the beginning," Cross agreed. "A civilization where strength protects weakness, where advanced species elevate primitive ones, where genocide becomes literally impossible because the cost exceeds any conceivable benefit." She paused, her expression becoming almost philosophical. For 30 years, humanity prepared for our return to the galaxy. We studied every genocide, every failed intervention, every moment when good intentions collapsed in the face of practical realities. We asked ourselves one question: what would it take to make the universe safe for peaceful species? And the answer, Kira asked, overwhelming, uncompromising, absolutely ruthless protection of the defenseless, Cross replied. The predators of the galaxy spent millennia learning that peaceful species wouldn't fight back. Now they're learning that peaceful species have friends who will. Colonel Chen stepped forward. Admiral, what are our orders regarding the Void Cult threat? Cross smiled, and for a moment, Kira saw the expression that had made entire enemy fleets retreat rather than face human wrath. We're going to do what we do best, Stara. We're going to show the galaxy's monsters that there are bigger monsters watching over the innocent. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in contemplative silence. Finally, Elder Thane spoke. 1 year ago, we were a dying species awaiting extinction in underground shelters. Today, we're partners in reshaping galactic civilization. How is such transformation possible? Colonel Chen considered the question seriously. Because sometimes, ma'am, all it takes is someone willing to say, no more, and mean it. The galaxy spent centuries accepting genocide as inevitable, diplomacy as ineffective, and strength as corruption. We just proved that all three assumptions were wrong. She gestured to the viewport, where the lights of New Geneva Station continued their eternal dance against the stars. The age of unopposed predation is over. The age of protected cooperation has begun, and any entity that threatens peaceful species will discover exactly why humans spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Outside, the mixed fleet of human and allied vessels maintained their eternal vigilance. Guardians of a new order where the strong protected the weak, and the ancient cycle of galactic genocide had finally been broken. In the depths of space, carried by quantum communication networks that spanned the galaxy, a simple message propagated to every civilized world. The humans have returned. The innocent are protected. The age of fear is over. For the first time in galactic history, it was a promise the universe could believe.